Longtime Orleans Sheriff's Office supervisor says understaffing at the jail led to protocol violations before Friday's escape.
He and a longtime Florida prison inspector tell Stephen Stock that resulted in the security breakdown that allowed the missing inmates to go unnoticed for almost 8 hours.
A source who's familiar with the inner workings of the Orleans jail tells us rules and protocol require bed checks every 90 minutes to 2 hours. That source also says both the sergeant and lieutenant supervisor on duty are also supposed to conduct rounds 3 times every 12-hour shift. Had that been done, our source says, jail employees would have noticed the missing inmates and the toilet pulled off the wall much sooner.
So, number one, I see no security checks being done.
Gary York retired after 3 decades in Florida corrections, including a dozen years as a senior inspector for the state prison system. He investigated everything from murder and assault behind bars to jail and prison escapes.
I also want to emphasize the security checks are also the responsibility of the supervisors. So I'm going to go interview the supervisors. I'm going to say, hey, why weren't your officers doing security checks? Are you following up with your officers? You know, are you watching what they're doing, and are you training them properly to do security checks? I see some complacency. Complacency is very bad in corrections.
There is also understaffing at the Orleans jail. While Sheriff Susan Hudson has publicly said staffing levels are only at 60% right now, our source tells us the reality is worse than that. The source says protocol requires 1 deputy and 1 civilian monitor for each pod, 6 pods on each floor. That's 12 corrections employees who were supposed to be on each floor, but that didn't happen.
At the time of the incident, there was no deputy physically on Pod 1 Delta, and the technician that was assigned to the housing unit module had actually stepped away to grab food.
Why was there no officer in that dorm? If there are cameras in that dorm, where was that person, the person watching the cameras?
The Orleans Parish Sheriff's Office says it now has suspended 4 employees after the escape.
Staffing is very low. Of course, every sheriff's office in the state's very low. It's hard to keep people at the sheriff's office.
Former Lieutenant Craig Lawson retired this February after 36.5 years at the sheriff's office. During that time, Lawson was a jail supervisor and knows the people still working there.
It's hard, always hard, but everybody just can't do the job. It's not for everybody. Lawson
defends those who continue to work at the jail, saying they're doing remarkable work under extremely trying and abusive circumstances.
It's just that tough. And everybody can talk about on television and everything else about knocking this person, knocking that person. You don't know till you're exactly going there.
Lawson says Orleans jail protocol discourages putting maximum security inmates together with minimum security inmates. Yet the 10 inmates that escaped were both. Lawson also says under protocol, high-risk inmates like 4-time convicted killer Derek Groves should have been housed on the 3rd floor, along with inmate Kendall Miles, who was recaptured in the French Quarter following the escape. Miles had previously escaped 2 other times from juvenile detention centers. Lawson says inmates like Groves and Miles are high risk and should be separated from others instead of in the minimum security area with pretrial inmates.
Different classification inmates is that when you have a high security risk inmate, you try to put them separately as much as possible.
But Lawson also says that in his experience, that's not always possible because of overcrowding.
If you have no place to put them, you're putting unsentenced and convicted people together because you have no place to put them.
We reached out to the sheriff requesting an interview to discuss protocols at the prison and staffing challenges. We didn't hear back. However, following the escape, the sheriff's office publicly admitted that the different classification of inmates should not have been housed together in the same pod.